Welcome to Brian Says. This is part 4 of the first part of the harassment series of 1 through 3. So, why would I have lost faith and trust in my leadership at IDOC? Well, obviously, it was lost over a period of time. First, it was literally in the first 6 months of my work. You can see a reference within my evaluation, which I also posted on Instagram about Kevin Sagayo, where I was in trouble for noticing someone dying right before my eyes. And when I started saying something, I found myself in trouble and actually at risk of losing my job if I did not ignore what I was seeing. Um, what did they say in my evaluation? Well, I did post it, but I'll tell you, I'll just read it aloud here. So it says, Brian takes his job seriously and has worked hard to learn the variety of areas that pertain to his position. He has learned quickly and takes time to delve into relevant background information when dealing with situations which arise. He has at times stepped into areas that are assigned to other staff, either based on intentional efforts to help out or because of unfamiliarity with which clients are assigned to his caseload. This has at times created some degree of conflict or confusion among inmates and or staff. Overall, Brian's work can be depended upon to be consistent, thorough, and accurate. So the confusion that my supervisor is talking about here is pretty interesting. There was no confusion. I saw someone who was dying literally right before my eyes, and was not quiet about it. I was working on getting Mr. Sagayo released before he died, and I asked why he was not getting help because it was baffling to me. So there was confusion apparently because before me, no one had ever spoken out on behalf of an offender who was in trouble, either physically, mentally, or otherwise. And that's probably worthwhile to mention because that statement that can't be true, right? But somebody who was there less than 6 months identified an issue that was life threatening and was trying to address it, and somehow that confused and irritated other staff. So the confusion was actually mine. So, how was what I was seeing accurate in any way? It was just bizarre. And so I did not ignore what I was seeing, but also I did not get it handled. And less than a month later, after that evaluation was written, Mr. Sagayo was dead. And this was in spite of my attempting to try to help him. So there are many red flags when it comes to working for IDOC. And not just in my area, but in many areas, which would occasionally make the news. I paid attention to all of it. So the next big incident for me was around 2 years later, where I received that write up for not being a volunteer, and the language never changed around that. I covered this in detail in the segment of the harassment 1 through 3, and it was starting on the 635 mark that you can revisit that if you wish. So even before that incident in 2017, it was one thing after another. I had to start picking my battles, so to speak, because there are weird things happening all the time. And you may have already seen the new segments around medical, which I will begin posting. So consider, I am but one case manager. Now, if you extrapolate what I have seen and reported to all the case managers, you see a much larger issue. And I've already covered how the case managers who have been around for some 10 plus years are also part of the problem within IDOC. Really, that pertains to anybody who's been at IDOC for any period of time. So if you are interacting with somebody and they're a long term employee, ask them some of those questions. How do you stay silent when you see somebody's human rights being violated? Does that make sense to you? So the only way you stay at IDOC is if you are a team player. If you are not a team player or you have a bad attitude as defined by IDOC, then you are actually the problem. Which brings us to the primary question. Am I, Brian McClure, the issue, or is it IDOC? That's a great question, right? So if you watched any of my posts thus far, I would like to believe that you are now able to see a bit of a pattern that is starting to reveal itself. So after a few short years, I had a realization that IDOC was injuring offenders and protecting staff and doing so at the expense of the offenders. Uh, what I was seeing was both illegal and creating a dangerous environment for both staff and the public when the offenders are actually released. And so that was happening all the time. This was not something that was just like a one off. I saw it everywhere. And when I said something about it, I'm the issue. And so if the offenders said something about it, then they were actively threatened by medical and security and case managers, sometimes all at the same time. In one instance, I saw someone in medical write in the offender's notes, which the parole commission looks at, uh, an account of a situation that was totally inaccurate. And the only reason it was put in their notes was because the staff member in medical was mad at this offender. When the offender went before the parole commission, they were denied parole because of this. Now, regarding that situation, this was brought up to leadership, and it was like, hey, this needs to be addressed. That note is inappropriate and way out of line. The problem was not the offender. We had a staff member who was a big problem. Did it get addressed? Absolutely not. So, yeah, denial of medical care and how the offenders are treated is a very big problem. So, the offenders of IDOC are also exploited for their labor. Think Keith Commissary for work crews where they go out and work in the public. And they do that, of course, for various companies within Idaho. And then there's the sex with offenders issue, which goes on. Generally, it's with each other, but unfortunately, it's also with staff. So at the beginning, I said that I had lost my faith and trust in leadership. This was exactly when it happened. So these events kind of made it clear to me that leadership was no longer redeemable. And at the time, the things that were going on, I started feeling like the leadership would actually put my life in jeopardy versus doing things the right way, and they were. And so these events in particular occurred in they occurred from the summer of 2019 to the winter of 2019, which you may remember was before COVID-19 kicked off. So this is what happened. So during the summer of 2019, case managers started getting these odd reports from offenders that there was a compromised staff member out there. The offenders were, of course, naming names, and this was putting the offenders themselves at risk. So the name that kept coming up was Rebecca Capolino, and this individual oversaw the kitchen area. And so that's where all these odd things were occurring. So this person, this individual, was part of the leadership team. Um, they were not following protocol when it came to offenders getting into fights. Uh, they were also hiring people to work in the kitchen who were causing a lot of issues within the prison. So they were doing a lot of things that were off policy, and that was not all that was happening. So I already mentioned, this Ms. Capolino was part of the leadership team at SICI. They were also allowing offenders from the male side to have sex with the women on the female side and vice versa. And then there are also reports also as well that Capolino was also having sex with an offender. So this was also getting reported. So this was all happening, and we were getting a lot of reports. Everybody knew what was going on. The offenders knew it, and they were reporting it. Leadership knew it, and they were telling staff to be quiet. And it went on for a substantial period of time, for at least 6 months. It was bizarre and baffling, and it put everybody at risk. So at a weekly case manager meeting, because we have one every week, this topic was brought up yet again. Like I said, it had been brought up now for months. And in this situation, on this time, because it had become such an issue, Warden Terry Jo Shewmaker just happened to be there, and she basically said, "Hey, um, oh yeah, let me before I get too far." So it was Terry Jo Shewmaker and Dana Drake, of course. So they're working hand in hand on keeping this quiet. What a surprise! So this is what Terry Jo Shewmaker said to all the case managers. They needed to back off. Yeah, which was shocking. Everybody just kind of looked at each other and was like, what is going on? And what was going on is leadership had decided that they were going to protect their friend at all costs at the expense of offender safety, staff safety, everything. And so that's what she said. And then she followed it up with even a more bizarre thing. She goes, hey, if you're going to keep writing IRs on this, because staff was writing a lot of IRs on this, you need to give them directly to me, and please do not put any IR numbers on them. Yeah. So that was another huge red flag. And so everybody is like going, okay, this is really not okay. So when I heard those words from both Drake and Shoemaker, I couldn't even pretend that my efforts out there to help people and follow their directives was actually going to result in anything positive for me or for the offenders. Because at all costs, IDOC leadership will protect themselves and do so against policy and against mission. And because of this, this leadership group, which has been entrusted to ensure the safety of society, actually makes our society way more dangerous. And this is just one of the many ways that they do it and have done it. So, returning from that meeting that day, of course, another offender came forward with more information. And I met with them. Um, and again, they disclosed that story. They said, hey, things are getting a lot worse. And now people are getting scared. So, yes, I wrote another IR and I put all the names in there. And I, of course, put an IR number in there and I turned it in. And maybe that's why another reason why I had such an issue, just a few short months after that was because of this situation. I had forgotten about it, to be honest. Um, so later, this staff member in question, this Rebecca Capolino, she was also putting money on offenders' books, paying off their debts. Yeah, that's how bad the situation was. And so, what do you think happened to this fine, outstanding leadership candidate of IDOC's supervisors? Yeah, I put a lot of words in there. They were not charged with any crime. They were allowed to just quit. Yeah. And after that all happened, um, I knew I could not afford to put my life in their hands anymore because they would kill me. And you know something? They actually tried. So that's it for this segment. I appreciate you watching, and until next time, as Brian says, be safe out there.